So let me just say again, this is Gary Kohler. He spent 52 years searching the Maine 2-footers, being a manufacturer in the Maine 2-footers, and being things for us as a hobbyist. And he's got a lot to share with us about his experiences. And so have at it, Gary.
All right. Hey, thanks for everybody for coming. And I've put actually a couple of years of thought into this and how I wanted to present this. And for some of you, I'm going to warn you all up front. If you're offended easily, you might want to leave now. If you're offended by me using the F word, click off now. Because I plan to tell my story, how I experienced this over the last 52 years. And the people that I've met, the things that I've experienced, at some point dawned on me that I became one of those guys that as a 14, 15-year-old, 52 years ago this month to be exact. And, you know, I was sitting around thinking about that I have all these stories of people that I have met and encountered along the way. And quite frankly, I think it's, you know, it's relevant. It has historical significance. And I hope that all of you get something out of it. And if I can move that over there, I'll get started on this. If you can, can you see the title slide here? 52 years, a 2-footer story,
Yep.
other stuff.
Yep.
That
Yeah.
is in the cab of number 7.
Gary, we see the whole PowerPoint presentation inside PowerPoint. Do you want to make it larger, or?
If you hit full screen, that would be good somewhere.
Wherever that's at. Where is it? Help me out.
Oh, right in there, maybe. Slideshow.
Yeah, hit slideshow up.
2 to the right.
Yeah, slideshow, that's it.
That's it.
There we go. That's great.
That's not the one I want to be on, but that's okay. I'll back up. Anyway, the title slide here, that is me in the cabin number 7. I believe this was the first year that I went to Edaville Railfans Day. And I believe Fred Richardson was the locomotive that day. If you guys have never had the pleasure of being on a locomotive when Fred was the engineer, you definitely missed out. But that was a very exciting time for me. The guy walking next to the running board there on next to number 7 there is John Brighton. He was the general manager at Edaville. Quite the pain in the ass. Bob Werner, absolutely. For those of you that know Bob Werner or knew Bob Werner, I'll get into that later in the story, but quite the pain in the ass. But anyway, I wasn't there to meet John that day. I was there to do what you're seeing, and I had a blast. But that isn't my first encounter. Dave put some of this together. Chris Coyle put some of this together, and this is just kind of to help me, you know, stay on task a little bit about what you guys are going to hear tonight. And one of the questions that Dave had asked me early on was, you know, some of the people that I had met along the way. And one of the other things that I have to be careful of, and I've actually been quite nervous about, is how do I not come off, and I know what some of you are going to say, how do I not come off as a pompous ass and sound like, you know, some sort of whatever bragger. But if you look at the list there, everybody with a plus, I met and or knew all of those people. Thurlow, I did not have the pleasure of meeting. He had passed away before my time, but we did get to know his nephew very, very well, and he really helped us out in our books on the narrow gauge in the Sheepscot Valley, but more about Bernsey later on in the story. But so I'll scan through this pretty quick. The rest of this stuff are some of the other topics that I would like to discuss in other 2-foot talk sessions, which hopefully you guys will be interested enough, and you know, we can do some other things down the road. I don't have to be you know, the one leading the charge on all of this stuff. I just, putting some stuff out there to help keep me focused. Same with the pioneers in 2-foot modeling. As I was going through all this, it dawned on me that I would be willing to bet the vast majority of you have no idea who the pioneers were in 2-foot modeling. And I feel that, it's important that, some of these guys do get recognized. I mean, I remember going around scrounging around in the local hobby shop's dumpster for old issues of RMC from in the 60s, and he would just randomly throw out, and I'd, go up there at, 14, 15 years of age and pour through these things and, haul home the ones that had anything of narrow gauge importance in them. But there was a lot of information in there that helped me and helped, guide me through my quest, as it were. So welcome to the world of seeking 2-foot info in the 1970s. And a few of you, I'm pretty sure, were around and know exactly what I'm talking about. But in 1973, I was still a senior in high school, and Ride the Sandy River came out that year. And I had to run around the neighborhood, mow 3 yards so I could get my ass down to the hobby shop and pick that thing up for 15 bucks, which at that time, besides Moody's book and Crittenden's book, those are the only two, major books on Maine 2-foot that were available. The other stuff, the, Higgins books, the Thurlow books, and Ernest Ward's book and McClinn's book, good luck finding that stuff. I had no idea what that stuff even was, even though one of the other hobby shops was selling Thurlow's book for $2, as I found out later on. But anyway, then about 1975, Bill Jensen's newsletter came on the scene. I'm sure a few of you can remember that. I do have every original copy of those mimeographed works of art, but I did have them all transcribed and put into book format. So if any of you really, really, really want to see what it was like back in the 70s trying to figure all this stuff out, treat yourself to that. After a few years of dealing with HON 30 and, coming to the conclusion that was a dead end street, I stumbled onto this, and I can't even remember. This is the original little catalog sheet that I got from Jim Eakin, believe it or not. And it's pretty fascinating. I ordered up a bunch of stuff and scratch built my first box car, I believe, in early 1975. And later on down the road, I'm fast forwarding here a little bit. Later on down, Peter Barney came out with his first Sandy River car shop kit, and I did buy it and I did build it. And I do have a slide that I was going to include here, but it was pretty horrible, so I didn't. Not the model, the slide, so I didn't include it here. For some of you guys that go back even further, there's a couple of flyers here. We're spoiled today. I'm going to tell you guys all that right now. We are all spoiled. Here's what 1971 and 1970, what you had to choose from. Scale railway equipment, Monson flat car kit, $9. And the last one I saw, those will go on eBay, I think went for over $100. And the Slim Gauge Productions kits, I don't know if any of you guys remember those. I actually have a couple out there out in the archives. But again, it was a box of sticks and a few castings. The teasers from Northwest Shortline, and I don't. If anybody wants to jump in, please do. Don't let me do all the talking. So, about 1972-ish, Northwest Shortline released these sheets. I believe these are the originals, and you can see what they were going to offer. Number 24 and Parlor Car 9 and Coach 21 and 22. Obviously, these never hit the streets, and I can tell you why, which is part of, I hope, what this is all about tonight. If you guys remember, around 1975, Custom Brass released their Portland Forney, which pretty much blew Northwest Shortline out of the water, which I'm sorry that happened. I wish they would have stuck with this and, and got these things out, but that didn't happen. So that came and went. 1975 is rolling around. I decided it was a good time to get married, bought my first pickup truck, and it was time to go to Maine. So on my, I get this all planned out. This was back, guys, this is back in the day when, we had to use real telephones and letters. We're all spoiled today. A couple of clicks, we can go get, thousands of whatever we want. You can, message, text, email, whatever, at a moment's notice. Back then, this took days to plan, to get this all worked out. And one of the first people that I had purposely tried to get in contact with was Bob Warner at the Hobby Barn. I don't know how many of you remember Bob. Bob and I became very, very close friends. I stayed at his house every time I was up. In fact, I ended up moving up there and lived right down the road from him for quite a while.
Is this a solo trip to Maine, or did you take your wife on her honeymoon?
Me and the missus. So we did a lot of other things other than this stuff, but it was a lot of fun. And I don't know why I started with this picture, because it was hardly the first one I took, but it is important. It's relevant. As it says, I believe this is one of the last, if not possibly the last photo ever taken of the Phillips engine house while it was still standing. So that would make it pretty important. But 1975, same year, this young guy standing there, as the caption says, he was the first true 2-foot fan that I'd ever met. Chris and I are still very good friends. And I think he's on tonight, or said he was.
Yeah, I'm here, Gary. I think you're one of the first 2-foot fans I met also, one of my first years up at Phillips.
He was pretty young in that picture. He was a lot younger than me, but those were good days, and I wished I could get some of those days back, because now we'll get more into that story later. But we had a really good time. Again, we've remained very good friends to this day, and but that coach has since been moved inside, thank God, because it sat there pretty much as you see it for years and years and years. And the first trip I made up to Phillips, there were several other box cars that are unfortunately no longer with us, but at the time they were there. These are the first photos that I took of the WWF in 1975, and I'm sure for you 2-foot or WWF aficionados, you can clearly see that most of this stuff's pretty much gone. The part of the water tower is still there, although it's cut off just above the door. But what I didn't know, and I'm still kicking myself in the ass for, the spout to the tank was laying right next to the side of the tank on the right in the weeds there. I didn't go over and look. Stupid me, probably wouldn't have taken it anyway, but be that as it may. The creamery building and the sail off and all that other stuff you can see on the bottom left photo was still there. So it was pretty exciting stuff.
Gary?
Yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, just out in the lower left photo here, just behind those buildings was the original grain store, Wisconsin grain store. That was an antique shop until it burned in '76. So you would have seen that too.
Yes, correct.
Hey, Gary, I went through there in '74 with my wife Irene on our honeymoon, and the two schooners were there. But I also remember seeing the gas tanks that were right next to Highway 1 there. They were still there. You remember those?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So you went across that bridge before they replaced it.
Yeah, well, we were coming back from our honeymoon in Nova Scotia, and I was just gaga looking at
That was a treat.
yeah. Oh, I can tell you a story about that.
Coming from Nova Scotia, going across that bridge.
Yeah. But, you could just make it out and just say, you could see what was going on at that point, but it was pretty much gone.
Yeah, the bottom right photo behind me, if you walked back into the weeds, well, there were frames of 3 flat cars still laying there. And Doug Maring, who's on with us tonight, I believe, grabbed a couple of pieces of hardware off of those things the last time we were down there. But
Sure did, and I have them.
there was a lot more stuff on them the first time I was there. And I'm gonna fast forward a little bit through the story, as I believe it was on this trip that Chris Coyle was up there with his family. They had a cabin up in some godforsaken wherever they were, where there was no telephone lines. Invited us up to their cabin and visit the Monson while we were there, which we did. And we were poking around in the engine house, and there was a Hart switch stand still laying there. And this is one of them fucking moments that I will take to the grave with me. This is one of the biggest regrets. I've had many regrets, but as far as 2-foot memorabilia, leaving that thing there, and the next time I came back, obviously it was long gone. So that was one of those moments of, I regret not going and buying a saw. But that thing never happened again when I was going to Maine, just so you know. Anyway, moving on. One of the other things that Dave asked was, had I met any, original employees? And yes, the answer to that is yes. I believe Chris Coyle, he was up there a lot more than me, met a lot of these other guys. But the one that I did have the opportunity to meet was Clifford Cushman, and I did get his autograph, as you can see. That's Cliff there on the right. And he was the only one that I can prove that I actually met. I do believe I met Andy Aldridge the same time I was there, but in the case of Cliff, I was smart enough to say, hey, you mind signing this for me, which he did. And so, yes, I actually met an honest to goodness real SR&R employee. I didn't meet this guy, but I happen to be very good friends with Elliot Stewart, which I'll get into a little bit more of that later. But and over the years, Elliot would tell us these never-ending stories, and I will relate at least one of them later on, which I find hysterical. You may not, but I find it hysterical. Anyways, when Elliot passed, one of the things he left me was this key that you're looking at. And I know that might not mean a whole lot to any of you, but to me, this is the only piece of anything from the Sandy River and Ranger Lakes Railroad that I can prove a direct connection to an employee, which happens to be Conductor Sonny Fairbanks on the left. This was his personal key that he had given to Elliot Stewart. Elliot Stewart had given it to me. And they're not going to put it in my casket, but it's going to stay with me for quite a while. So I know for a lot of people, that's no big deal. I'm sure some of you are bored to tears even listening to the story, but to me, that's a pretty big deal when you're as fascinated with this railroad as much as I am. Don't believe everything you read in the caption. I don't think this was the only piece of rolling stock I ever owned, but for the sake of the story and speed along, we'll just say that it is. But I did have temporary ownership of this for a time, and I was actually living up there at this point, and I happened to be up driving around, and I went over by Starbird's Mill, and I looked over in their dump, and there's 2 boxcars sitting there. And, like, what the f is this all about? So I went over, poked around. I kind of knew Virgil Starbird, picked the phone up, called him and said, hey, dude, what's the deal here? What's going on? So we went through the whole thing. He says, if you want them, you can have them. Great. I said, perfect. Don't do anything with them. Let me figure this out. The end of the car, as you can see, if I had a pointer, I'd point to it. The end of the car that's missing, which still had the number on it, I took. I'm not quite sure what happened to it, but the car is at Phillips. Now it has been restored. It is Boxcar 155. So that is definitely the biggest piece of memorabilia I ever owned personally. If anybody can outdo me, please chime in.
Gary, where did you live? Did you live in Phillips or live up in Franklin County somewhere?
I lived in Massachusetts and I could see Plymouth Rock from my window.
Okay. And was part of your motive to be closer to the 2-footers?
That was every bit my motive.
And so then you bought a piece of the 2-footers and you weren't sure what to do with it because you couldn't get it to Plymouth Rock.
No, that was not coming home, but it did, like I said, I once I realized, I made a couple of calls and I couldn't, this wasn't happening. So I called Phillips and, they came and got the stuff. Their pulp rack now is the frame off of the other boxcar that was there. And I'm not going to fast forward to the other 2 cars that I may have temporarily had possession of for a short time, but
so Phillips Historical Society was in play in 1978.
You're talking about Phillips, right?
Well, you said they went to Phillips, so
Yeah, the railroad park. Even though they knew the cars were there, they had to be apparently prodded to go get the things, but whatever.
they probably didn't know they could be bought, or they didn't want to fund
They
it.
were free. They didn't have to be bought. You just come and get them.
That's pretty steep.
So, but now again, there's another story that's a little bit more interesting, I guess. But we'll get to that later. The next story or the next slide. So again, if anybody gets offended easily, then I suggest you click off now. Bigelow Station and Tales of Nudes in the Bushes. And, I've been going up there for, this wasn't my second or third trip. I've been up there quite a few times. And so again, I'm up roaring around and I wheel into Bigelow. And for those of you that have been there, I don't know if you're aware that most of the buildings that were there, at least back in the 70s, 80s, are railroad original buildings. And there's a couple off to the on the right, out of the slide that you can't see. So I pulled in there and I stopped. And the first cabin there is a row of hedges around it. This girl pops up from behind these hedges, pretty much as you see in that stick figure. And that isn't my sketch, by the way. Somebody did ask me that because I did a dry run on this. But this girl, completely nude, pops up behind us from the shrubs. And, I don't know. I didn't know what to do. What do you do? She didn't seem, she could have cared less. But anyway, I didn't stay very long because I wasn't quite sure what was going on. I didn't know if it was a Charles Manson thing or what. But anyways, I thought that was amusing. You don't have to laugh. I thought it was interesting.
It is an odd place to go to if anyone who's been there. It seems even now, or when I went back in 2001, it's kind of isolated. You feel like you're on somebody's private property, which you probably are. But yet the railroad buildings are still, were there.
And the station is, I think, someone's ski house. Like they pretty much just hang out there during ski time, during ski season.
Might be. There's a building attached to it, which at first glance looks like the freight house got pulled in, but it's a separate attachment.
Right, they tore down what, but I'll just touch on the whole.
The cool thing about the inside of that is it still has all its original wainscoting
Oh, wow.
when you look through the bay windows.
Yeah, the entire inside's completely
At the
original.
naked girls.
Didn't see that.
But the last time we were there, the key was there and we, like dummies, we didn't go in. But hey, whatever. The section men's house, because I know this color thing gets brought up all the time, and you know, we can, I'm sure Chris and I can, you know, regale you guys with a whole evening's worth of talk on color down the road. But for tonight, we'll just touch on this a little bit, as I believe the building's long gone now. Anyways, somewhere along the line, the railroad built the section car house right next to and up against this wall of the section men's dwelling. Over the years, the building started to peel away and separate, and as you can see, revealed the original paint. So anybody that doesn't believe that it was red and yellow, well, there you go. It is red and yellow. And what you're looking at there probably hadn't seen sunlight in many, 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 many years.
I'd also like to add that, you know, for those people who have gone around and collected samples, these things are invaluable because no black and white photo is ever going to get it right better than that, better than what you see right there.
That is correct. And there's a picture of me doing what I was doing best, and that was doing some historical salvaging of the stuff you saw on the previous slide. But as you can see, there was a really good, you know, chunk of this building that was, you know, still painted, you know, red and yellow. And Bigelow Station had only, from what I could see, had been repainted once, which was with a brown paint, which had pretty much had been peeling off. So all the red and yellow was starting to show through. So none of these buildings had ever been repainted in the gray and green paint scheme. And I know I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but I mean, I am trying to stay on time here. But as I get further into this presentation, I get into, over the years, I started collecting original correspondence from, you know, the Moody's, Crittendens, and Thurlows, and all these guys. And as I was going through all this material for this presentation, I stumbled on a sheet where they were discussing, those guys were, the number of stations that actually had been repainted at a given point in time, and there were only 9 of them. So, you know, doing some quick math, there was a lot of stations that never got repainted. And I'm guessing the 9 that did get repainted were all the, you know, Strong, Phillips, that sort of thing. So, speeding on.
Like possibly the ones on the way to Rangeley.
Maybe, but that's a whole separate conversation, dealing with the P&R side. Anyways, as the caption says, Reddington, introduction to Commander Sullivan, Brunswick Naval Air Station, Tomahawk missiles, and the last photo ever of Reddington Station. There's a lot to unpack there. But I'm going to tell you the whole story because it's, one, it is very significant and absolutely fascinating. There is some humor here. I get that. I get it. I'll be laughing inside, so don't worry about it. Anyway, one year, Ron King and I were up there, and we decided that we needed to get in there before we couldn't get in there anymore. We had already known. In fact, the first time I snuck in there, it was still being used as a Navy SEALs training camp. And I don't know if you guys knew that, but that's what it had been for a while. The Navy also shot Tomahawk missiles in there offshore, which scared the crap out of the locals until they got pissed off enough, and finally, the Navy finally stopped doing that. But anyway, when the year we went up there, it was still being used by the Navy as I believe it was for down pilot recovery training stuff.
Gary, it was the Sears School, SEERS, Survival, Escape, Evasion, and Recovery.
Thank you.
I went through the school there, so
Perfect. I knew it. Thank you. So there, we got somebody firsthand that had been there and went through this whole thing. Thank you, Matt.
I did too, and it was not fun.
It was not.
No.
Well,
Yeah, but did you get to do any Maine 2-foot exploration while you were there? That's the real question.
Yes.
Well,
While
if you-
running away from the enemies trying to capture us, definitely got to look around.
Yes, if you look at this photo that Gary has up, if you look up on the side, there's kind of a plateau, a ridge towards the back. It's not the high one. It's where it comes down. It's kind of a step and then it fades off. I made it to about there because I was a 2-foot fan even when I went through the school. And I knew they were going to catch us and beat us. So I thought, well, I'm going to try and get as far over as I could. And so I made it to there. And they actually had a helicopter looking for me. All the other guys just wanted to hang around and get caught because they didn't want to get cold. It was bitterly cold. We didn't have shoes. They take your shoes away.
Jesus.
But it was in April. It was muddy. And I made it to about there before they caught me. So
that's good stuff. I love it. That might be even better than what I'm going to tell you.
no, your stuff's about the 2-foot.
So the day we were there, and for those of you that have, decided to venture back there, there's several gates that you have to get through or hope that are open as you journey back. Well, the day we went there, all the gates were open except one. And so we drove up to this last gate, and of course there's signs all the way back. So, we knew we were, taking our lives in our hand. Well, sure enough, here come these, I don't know where these 2 shore patrol guys came from, but they came out of nowhere and they flew up on us and they were fucking pissed off. And I mean, what do you say other than we're 2 idiots from out of town and we're interested in this railroad crap. Where do we go from here? So I don't know if they'd heard this story before, but the guy says, well, you need to get a hold of Commander Sullivan down at the Brunswick Naval Air Station and go from there. Well, son of a bitch, I did. I went back to the hotel that night and I called this guy the next morning. Believe it or not, I actually got a hold of him, which shocked the hell out of me. And very cool. Oh yeah, not a problem. He says, you come back tomorrow at such and such time. We'll have a truck waiting for you. No problem. Are you kidding me? And having a truck waiting for us. So sure enough, we're there. And trust me, we weren't late either. The guy hops out. He's in his fatigues. Knew exactly what we were talking about. And he said, look, I just, I know you talked to the commander, blah, blah, blah. He says, you got to hurdle the fence. And I was, I'm not allowed to open it for you. So sure enough, we got over the fence, no problem. But climbed in the truck and away we went. It was, I believe, 3 miles from there to the station. But this guy said, he said, look, I got all the books. He said, this is what I do when I'm not doing this. He said, I got a whole garage full of junk that I've picked up over the years, knew where everything was. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better situation than what we had that day, thanks to the U.S. Navy. So I'm a fan of those guys. But this was probably the last picture of the station ever taken. I believe it was torn down the following year. I mean, I could be wrong on that, but I don't think I am, but I believe it was torn down the following year. So this was probably the last picture taken by a 2-foot fan of Reddington.
Gary, what year were you in there?
You're killing me here with that stuff. I don't know. I'd have to go look at the back of the picture. It's probably in the 90s, early 90s.
I got in there in 1992. You gave me the name to call at Brunswick Naval Air Station. They put me in touch with Captain Ron Russell, who brought me in, but that was 92. I was never really sure how long the building lasted after that.
Not long. it was, the inside was really rough. So, but some of the other buildings, as far as I know, did survive. There were a couple of, I don't know about the building that you can see there on the right. I don't know if that's original, but there were a couple of other buildings that were there that were original when the railroad was there. And, you know, through some of my research over the years, there were people still living in there in the 40s. And, you know, back in the old days, you know, when they actually, you know, read newspapers, there was in the back, they had made mention of Mrs. So-and-so walked in from Reddington into Rangeley to grocery shop and then walked home. I'm not sure exactly how far that is, but I know it's more than 10 miles. So anyway, there were still people living in there in the mid-late 40s.
And when did the Navy take over and take the land?
I have no idea when they took that over.
And they still have it, right? I think I noticed that when I was up there in early 2000, but.
Yeah, as far as I know, they still have possession of that. But, you know, one of the other things I wanted to point out, if you look at this particular picture, you can see how just unbelievably remote and rugged this was. And, you know, and I covered a lot of this in the logging presentation that I did, and I focused on Reddington a little bit. But what you're looking at here is, it's probably 3 to 4 miles in any direction of nothingness. Nothing. Sugarloaf off to the far right of the picture, and Reddington mountain ski resorts in there someplace too. But you know, this is, and behind you, this picture was taken from the other way, you could see Saddleback Mountain over on the other side. But you know, it's just very remote, very rugged. You know, and you can kind of get, you know, what was going on there with the railroad.
Hey, Gary, was this your photo or somebody else's?
No, I took a series of photos there. The first time I was in there, I did not, like a dope. I didn't have a camera with me, but you know, we came up Sluice Hill. We came in Sluice Hill twice. We did that 2 times, and this time we decided to be a little bit smarter, or try to be smarter, and ended up getting a ride in instead of getting arrested while we were in there.
Well, I was just interested in the coloration of that building.
I do have color photos. I just didn't, most of those are close up, so I just didn't include them here.
Yeah.
I mean, that really wasn't what I was, you know.
Was it the yellow and red?
No.
If I could pipe in for a minute, Gary, I think when I was there, it was sort of tar paper shingles on the outside.
Yeah, it was, there was some gray and green on it. But I'm not sure, this wasn't the original station either. I believe this was the second station. And so I don't know if it had ever, but and I'm drifting off here with this paint color stuff. Gray and green was the original P&R colors anyway. So, because they were under Maine Central's thumb from the very beginning, in case you guys didn't know that. You do now. Anyway.
Good reminder.
Yes, we can cover that in the color thing down the road. Wooly Bully, Carl and the Crazy Indian, and I think at least one guy should know who the guy in the middle is. But for those of you who don't know who these characters are, the guy on the left is Colonel James T. Sullivan. Everybody south of the Mason-Dixon line has an honorarium of being a colonel. I don't know why, but he has been branded the Colonel James Sullivan from Texas. We would typically say it with a southern drawl, but he loved it. I don't know if he ever was a real colonel or not, but he seemed to enjoy it. The middle guy there is Doug Marin, who is with us tonight. And
The good old days.
James Sullivan is with us. I just saw that.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, well, that's a good thing. so you could see this. See what you used to look like there, Colonel.
Yeah.
The guy kneeling down is Doug Pyatt. I don't think Doug's with us, but I don't know if you guys, I don't know what you guys can see or not. Can you see that? That's me sitting in the pilot seat of his C5 up there. He used to fly into Pittsburgh out of Delaware. This was back when you could do that stuff. And hop in the truck, just drive through the gate. He says, "Hey, how you doing, fellas?" Roared down the tarmac of the plane. That was cool as hell. What an absolute wonderful day that was to get in that plane and check that thing out. But I know it's not 2 foot. But anyway, so I don't know if it was on this particular trip or not that Carl the Wild Indian, again, that crap offends you guys. Well, click off now, and I won't be offended. So anyhow, Carl was one of those guys that, yeah, he was just a great guy. He was very involved with the Albion Historical Society, Albion Station Restoration, and he's the guy that everybody wanted to have as their grandfather. He just was. He was just one cool individual, and he just didn't take bullshit from it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This guy was amazing. I totally miss him.
He was something else. So anyway, he says, "Hey, let's go down to Woolies, get a hamburger." Great. So we roar down there, and we're over poking around, getting a drink and chips or something. And he rolls through the door larger than life like he typically did. And he goes, "Hey, what do you got good to eat today other than that shit you feed the tourists?" And we're all standing there. And this poor guy, I'm going to click to the next slide. This poor guy. What the fuck is this all about? And Carl was absolutely as straight as an arrow and never missed a beat. And this poor guy,
yeah.
he was sweating over his grill. By the way, all those burgers there were for us.
Yep.
I didn't misspell beast either. Woolies in the country western at its beast. Anyway, for those of you that don't know, Woolies was, by the way, the best damn hamburger I ever ate, because that slide there says so.
It was. Yeah. Good stuff.
It was really, really good. Anyway, these two guys, this guy and his brother, apparently became some sort of country western stars, or so the story went. And they ended up selling Woolies off to, see, this is where I have to be politically correct, not that I really want to be, but anyway, they sold it to somebody from a foreign country, and Woolies was never the same after that. But anyway, these two guys went down to Nashville, and several years later, the story came back that these two numbnuts got into a fight with each other, and one of them shot and killed the other.
Oh, geez.
So country western at its beast. There you go. So that's the story of Carl and Woolies and the best damn hamburger we'd ever ate up until that time.
Hey, Gary, I got a story about Carl. So one time I got a couple of stories actually. One time we were, I don't know where we're going, driving somewhere, and we stopped to get some ice cream. Remember that? And he had his dog.
I do. I was telling that story to somebody the other day. Go ahead.
And he had his dog. The dog was the sweetest dog. And we stopped at this like soft serve place. And there's a couple of kids in front of us in line. And he goes, "Hey, do you guys know how to get to Augusta from here?" And the kids are like, "Well, you kind of have to go this way." He goes, "Well, let me tell you." And he starts to rattle off all the directions for how to get there. And the kids just looked at him like, "What?" It took him a while to get the joke. It was amazing. Like you said, straight as an arrow. Unbelievable.
Hey, that was good stuff. But I do have more stories about Carl down the road. But for now, we're going to talk about you.
Oh, here we go.
I believe,
Scatty.
I believe this was one of the first, this was when I was still doing the show at my house. And Chris shows up one year. Now, I don't know, is this the one when you took the detour through Gettysburg to?
Probably.
I can't
Probably.
remember. And anyway, we were getting ready to go. I don't know what we were going to do, and you left your layout on the hood of your car, or was it the roof?
It was the hood. It was the hood. I was packing up, and I had a piece of flex track, a loose piece of flex track. I didn't want to damage it, so I put it on the hood, packed up everything else in the car, and I start to back out of the driveway in your old house there, and guys like, whoa, whoa. And I'm like,
we'll have more about that whoa stuff later.
I'm gonna add that in there. And so we stopped. He's like, you got a piece of track on your hood. And then I think I was so distracted. I think I almost drove into a ditch after that too. Good time.
This isn't 2 foot, but it is. It isn't, and it is.
I remember one year when he collected a deer on his truck. So.
Well, now you're fast forwarding now.
Yeah, I know.
We're not there yet. But these two guys aren't with us, so I'll probably speedo past the hello baby and other tales. And by the way, Daryl did send me an email earlier and wanted to remind me of the non-disclosure agreements that we had signed, and he does have an attorney on retainer. So I know none of you get that, but those of you that were there certainly do. So we can speed past that.
I was in the room.
Hello, baby. So I'll just briefly see. There was this running joke with Daryl. We go off on these crazy trips, and he'd always be roaming around in front of the hotel room window with his Speedo on and the drapes open, which really isn't true, but we always said that. So we thought it was funny. You don't have to, but it was funny at the time. And after a couple of beers, it was really funny. This story is fucking hysterical. But so the one year we go up there, and somehow or another, Daryl had found out about a so-called Sandy River passenger car stove being for sale. And I think it was, the only ones left was, I think, Chris, me, and Daryl, if I remember right. And we stayed at a hotel down in Portland because we had flights the next morning. And so Daryl had been calling this guy, and and over the years, I'd always told Daryl, I said, Daryl, first things first, one, don't tell any of these people where you're from. They don't, this Flatlander crap, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to see that you're from New York, and they don't want to hear that you're from New York or any of that other stuff. So don't say that. Dials a phone, back in the days, we actually used phones. Picks up the guy, answer, he goes, what do you think what do you think he said? Hi, this is Daryl from New York. I just told you not to say that. You can almost hear the click. So he starts asking this poor guy all these questions about the stove. He hangs up, and the guy had made some excuse and had to go, and he was going to get back with him and blah, blah, blah. And I said, Daryl, I said, I told you not to do that. So we wait. Daryl calls the guy back. The phone's busy. Hangs up. You could tell he's fuming now. 20 minutes later, picks the phone up, dials again. The phone's still busy. Hangs up. I said, let's go get something to eat. We go get something to eat, come back, dials the phone's still busy. Now he's really fucking pissed. So now we go to bed. I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and he's over there. You could see him like hiding under the cover, dialing the damn phone, and it was still busy. So I said, Daryl, I told you, don't tell them where you're from. But anyway, I thought it is funny. It was a funny story.
It's all true. It's all true. We were at the Waterville friendlies that night. I remember that. Unbelievable.
Which reminds me of another story that involved Daryl, but that's coming up. This next slide, I don't know if any of you know who Dick White was or what the Maine Central 470 was, but I got to know Dick It was probably back in the 80s. Dick White, by the way, was the last steam locomotive engineer on the Maine Central. He actually fired the 470, which still survives, which happens to be the name of the railroad club up there. It's the 470 Railroad Club. So all know that now. But we used to go over to Dick's house all the time, anytime we were up. And so one time we rolled up to Dick's place, and we went in, and Dick comes over. He goes, "Hey, aren't you that guy that's into that 2-foot stuff?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Go in the back room back there." And he goes, "Dig out all my photo albums and get all that 2-foot shit out of there." And he said, just take it. Great. So I spent the rest of the day back in Dick's room in his photo albums and helping myself to all his 2-foot photos, which this picture here at the time I had never seen this photograph. It had never been published. And as far as I know, had never been seen by pretty much anybody else outside of Dick's house. It's been published several times since, probably thanks to me, but this was one of the pictures that I did get from Dick White. And it's, an absolutely fascinating photo of PNR3 up at Reddington. But what a great guy. He had the memorabilia this guy had was it was mind numbing. You get down in his basement. I mean, he had one whole wall of station signs and lanterns hung. You couldn't even see the floor or the ceiling from the railroad lanterns down there. Just an amazing guy. I'll let you guys read that for a second, and then I'll get into this. And if you see, Chris did manage to pop into the picture down there for those you sharp-eyes. See it? Get it? No?
Oh, I got it.
Okay. Anyway, back in the day when in this picture, that particular photo of Chris there, I think he's about 27. What we used to do was we'd send Chris in to run interference for us. And this is all true. I'm not making any of this crap up. This is honest to God true stuff. So if you want to know how, this mid-level, railroad historian types used to do it, this is how we did it. I'd send in the young guy, go schmooze with the babes, particularly the MILF over there at Hussey's store. What was her name, Chris?
I don't remember. I'm still stuck on MILF.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
She loved you. But anyway, so what was the name of this road this thing was off of?
It was Trestle Lane. It's still there. Trestle Lane.
This toothless girl that lived down at the end of this thing. We sent Chris down there to go deal with her. And we snuck down the other way and got this and a couple other pictures of the Cooper's Mills tank. By the way, there is no photo of Cooper's Mills tank when the railroad was running that I know of. Somebody may have stumbled on one recently, but I'm not aware of it. So there's very, very few photos. You can see the tank's still there. I took a couple of other pictures of it, but I'm not sure what else is out there. But thanks.
It's pretty much gone now.
Thanks to Chris and running interference, we were able to get in there, and that's what the young guys were for. Yeah, I know everybody ain't getting it, but this is significantly important. The I ain't got no stinking photos thing is another story that involved Daryl. And I can't remember how we stumbled on this woman. I don't know if it was from Earl Keefe's daughter.
It was through the China Historical Society.
Yeah. Okay.
We got a number. We got an address and a number, and the guy there was like, "Yeah, just go on over to her house, and she's got tons of photos.
Mm-hmm.
They're all great. All these original, real photo postcards. She's like the only one in town who has all these old photos."
Yeah.
So we went there. And we rolled to the driveway and no one's there. And then she rolls up in her car.
Oh, the sun came.
We're like, yeah, our son. We're like, hi, we're doing research on the WW&amp, and we were told by so and so at the China Historical Society that you had a whole bunch of great photos, and we thought, like, could we see your photos and maybe put them in our book? And then Gary, what'd she say?
She's looking at her husband and she goes, I don't have any photos, do I? Photos? Now her son just told us she had photos, not more than an hour from her coming home. So anyway, after the third volume 3 came out, we're doing a book signing up at the China Historical Society, and I'm nudging Chris, and I said, Chris, look who's coming. So you could see this woman almost knocking people down to get to the front of the line to get her book signed. So it's amazing how this stuff comes around, but it's just an interesting story to some of the things that we went through when we were doing research for some of these projects. But for everybody in town to say, yeah, you're the person that you have to see because she's got all the stuff, to I don't have anything, to being the first person in line to go get your book signed, seemed a little odd.
Yeah. I would like to say that, of all the times we went there, it was less than a handful of times that we met resistance or opposition. Every other time, it was unbelievable. People were just like, yeah, come on in. Like the nicest people. I can only think of like 2 or 3 times when we, really met some kind of resistance. But everyone else up there was amazing.
Yeah, I got a story about, well, I'll get to that in a second. One thing at a time. So I had to edit this one because our host tonight wasn't happy with my slide here. But for those of us that were at the Herbert that night, to get this story about Sade and Smooth Operator and Black Drab Irons, certainly know what I'm talking about. And I know a couple of you are here. I think Jeff Bissonnette's still with us.
Yeah, I'm here.
So I'll deal with the Smooth Operator thing first. So Daryl, unfortunately, is not here to defend himself, but those of you that know Daryl Slazinski know that he is an unbelievably fine musician. This guy's played with everybody from Ray Charles to Ella Fitzgerald and everybody in between, and still takes sax lessons unbelievably, which I don't quite get, but he explains it to me anytime I ask him. Anyway, so him and Chris decide to get into this argument one night at the Herbert about Sade and Smooth Operator. And Jeff and me are sitting there rolling our eyes and like, what the fuck are these two idiots talking about? And so it just, over the hour or so, it kept escalating. Daryl's dug in on his position of being a technician. By the way, for those of you that follow any of that kind of stuff, Daryl cannot stand Kenny G. Thinks he's, the antichrist of sax players or whatever. But
yeah, it all started because I said something like, Sade was like jazz or something, and Mark Harris and Daryl were like, no, she's not.
Oh, yeah, those were fighting words. So that scene got ugly in a hurry. But Daryl, because I just asked him about this again the other day, and he's I don't have any problem with Sade, but to equate her to, I know I'm getting off pace, but
real jazz,
not that fake stuff. But, for you guys that weren't there sitting at the Herbert at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm sorry, you guys missed out. Those are absolutely some of the best times that we had, and some of the things that we, for those of you that have not been there, by the way, or at least the last time we were there, that place was 100% original except for the light bulbs and the fixtures. 100%. I mean, that place was amazing. And they would leave, they would literally leave at night and tell us to lock up. See you tomorrow, and they'd leave and walk out the door, and that was that. And we had a blast up there, and we'd sit up there, all crazy hours in the morning and talking about Sade and whether she was or wasn't jazz, and black grab irons, which we did. Doug and Chuck and Chris got into this fucking just asinine, ridiculous conversation about whether grab irons. Dave, are you seeing where this whole thing was going now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Anyway, so after about an hour or two of listening to those three numbnuts talking about black grab irons, they weren't black, by the way, fellas. So we can clear that up. But on this particular night, Chuck was pretty much dug in on they had to be painted black. And
Right.
Chris was pretty much dug in that they weren't, and the rest of us were getting tired. But
You forgot Chuck's alligator boots.
no, Doug, I didn't. I was just trying to leave them out of the
Well,
store.
Gary, don't forget that after we argued for about an hour about black grab irons, I mentioned the fact that the photos of the roofs of the WWF cars showed that they had tin roof panels.
Yes.
And then that just restarted it all again.
Yes, it did, Chris. You don't have to remind all of us.
That was quite a night.
It was a wonderful night.
Yeah, he does have to remind, by the way. Yes.
But for some reason, Chuck talked with this southern drawl. No offense to any of you guys south of the, Mason-Dixon line, but he's from New Jersey. So I didn't get that either, but whatever. Anyhow, so when we weren't, being busy talking about, black grab irons and Sade and other musical tales, we did actually cover some honest to goodness 2-foot stuff. And, like what we were doing the next day and that sort of thing. This is a little bit out of sequence, but that's okay. You'll all bear with me. So you can digest that. That's obviously Locomotive 16 on the left. That is Yosemite Sam on the right, for those of you that don't know. And this is one of my personal favorite Elliot Stewart stories. And for those of you who do not know who Elliot Stewart was, he was the author of Sunset on the Sandy River, which I was lucky enough to publish for him, and become quite close with him over the years. And the man literally, when he walked to school, he cut through the engine house going and coming every day he was in high school. Every day. I want to just try to digest that for a second. This guy walked through the Phillips engine house every day going to and from school. I believe 7 of his relatives worked for the railroad. Obviously, he didn't have to worry about a train ride, and which is where this story's headed. It's absolutely fascinating. There's a couple of different things going on here aside from the kind of the silly side of the Yosemite Sam thing. There's some historical significance here, and according to Elliot, he was able to get on number 16 on a trip up to Madrid Junction. Now, according to, if you follow and or believe anything in Moody's book, pretty much everything north of the covered bridge had been cut off. Pretty much of that shut down in 32, 33. Well, that is not true. In fact, there's actually several sources of information where they were running trains regularly up to the Madrid Junction and hauling long lumber out of there, long logs or poles. And this particular day, he happened to catch a ride on number 16. So number 16 was still in service in 1934. Anyways, and for those of you that have been there and understand the layout, towards the end of this, which there's only a few more slides, I do have a track layout of Madrid Junction, which would be absolutely fascinating for a modular layout. But anyway, so they're rolling in there. And this guy that looks similar to Yosemite Sam there jumps out of the bushes brandishing, this is his story now, brandishing 2 nickel-plated revolvers and yelling and screaming, trying to hold up the train. And, so he went on with this story for a while, and I'm sure some of it was embellished a bit, but the bottom line was they all believed that this guy was somebody that kind of left the Wild West under, mysterious circumstances. They thought he was some sort of bandit or something from the Wild West, but apparently this guy lived up there in one of the old, lumber shacks and was basically this hermit. But apparently when the crews would go up there, this guy dressed kind of like you could see Yosemite Sam there would jump out of the bushes with his nickel-plated revolvers. So there's some. I thought it's a fascinating story. I don't know if any of you are glazed over or not. I'm not going to look.
This happened more than once, not just the one time Elliot Stewart was on the train.
Yeah, it was at the time he was there, but according to the train crew, this had happened several other times.
And then did he just run back into the bushes after shooting his guns? Or?
Yeah, apparently he doesn't. I mean, he didn't like shoot anybody or really hold the train up, but he'd come out and yell and scream and wave his guns and make a scene. And I mean, what are they gonna do? They just open the throttle up a little bit and keep moving. But anyway.
So Gary, I don't recall the story totally, but for years there was this question as to what color the lettering was on the SR&RO locomotives. And was it you that asked him or someone else? And he was emphatic that it was yellow. And it just blew our minds.
Yes, it was me. And yes, he was emphatic about it was yellow. So
up until that point, there had been no record of the color of the lettering on the locomotives. Everyone just assumed that it was white or silver because that's how it shows up in a black and white photo.
Well, all the early documentation, and I do have a complete list of all the locomotives and what they were originally yellow. They were all either gold leaf or aluminum leaf.
Yeah, correct. As built.
But I also have a paint requisition for yellow lacquer in small cans. Now, I'm not sure what exactly they were. We could sit around here and debate the rest of the night if they were possibly painting with yellow lacquer. But the point is that, there is evidence that they were doing that. And so you have an eyewitness account, you have a requisition for, buying yellow lacquer, and so why not? But, if you get a really good black and white photo, you can clearly see that it's not white, or at least from our research would suggest that it's not white. So now for the fun stuff. I know you're all saying it's about time. I'll let you read that just for a second.
I remember this well.
So for those of you that have not been able to participate in one of our high-speed tours, I can only say we're sorry. But this was on one of our famous high-speed tours, and we were just leaving Farmington, I don't know if we had met in Farmington, got some, ate breakfast or whatever, because these things typically took about 12 to 14 hours. Anyway, so we're roaring up Route 4, and so McChesney and me are in the lead. He's driving, and I could see the deer coming. And this couldn't have been choreographed any better than what happened here. Anyway, so the deer leaps. And I saw him coming, and I'm yelling at Chris, whoa, whoa, whoa. He said, you fucking always yelling whoa, whoa, whoa at me. Well, fucking slow down. Then I won't have to yell whoa, whoa, whoa all the time. So anyways, the deer jumps up clear over the road, lands square on his hood. The hooves flailing all over the place, slides off. Again, perfectly choreographed, slides off. For those of you that have been up there know that, there's the berms, everything's sand up there. Hits the sand, takes off through the swamp, not quite unlike this picture here, and never saw the deer again. But we still talk about that story up to and including several days ago, by the way. So it's just
yeah. That was on the road from Farmington to Maplewood.
Yeah. I was in the car
behind you.
I was in the car behind him. Yeah.
Chris likes to embellish it a little bit, but whatever. Don't listen to that. Listen to my version. It's a little closer to the truth. Not that I embellish it any. But anyways, that did happen. So that was one of the. I don't know why I used the picture. I didn't have a picture of deer, so I had to use the moose picture. But anyhow, the three godfathers and more tales of 2-foot salvage operations. This story here, this took years for this to unfold. These two, there's two boxcars there, by the way, not just the one you see in the photograph. But I guess technically they became the possession of the three godfathers. So we collectively owned these two cars for a very short period of time. But anyways, it took me several years to track down where these things were. And they were off in some weedy road outside of Farmington. But again, it took forever to track this down. But this was, all part of the fun of, doing this and going back and, beating the bush and, picking up the real phone and making real phone calls and writing letters. But we finally tracked them down. And the first time back there, they were pretty much about the condition that you see in this photograph. And the last time we went back, a tree had fallen through, caved them in. So the roofs had pretty much been broken at that point. And
Yep.
so
there was two cars, and the older car had completely collapsed, and the ends had dropped forward. So the ends of the car were on the ground facing forward. And this car, the newer of the two, for the 125 series, the roof had been crushed so that you couldn't really stand up inside fully. The center was crushed down.
Correct. Now, in this case, we didn't send Chris to go deal with. I tracked somebody down and somehow found the owner, unbelievably. And so I called the guy up and I said, hey, this is Gary Kohler. I'm with the Albion Historical Society, and we're here at your two box cars. I see the tree fell through them and blah, 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 blah. And we'd like to know what you're going to do with these things. And he says, well, I kind of promised them to Phillips. And I said, well, yeah, that was 10 years ago. He said, yeah, that's true. And I said, well, how about we'll have it cleaned up for you this weekend? How about if you give them to us and we'll have your property cleaned up this weekend? Perfect. Done. So we became owners of these two wrecked Sandy River boxcars for a very short moment in time. And I'll fast forward here to Carl the Wild Indian. And that is Carl there on the right. That young dude in the middle, that's Chris, and that's Daryl on the left. So we got a hold of Carl, and said, hey, look, 2 box cars, you can have all the hardware, blah, 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 blah. Him and his buddy Dave Bolduck came up that weekend and literally cleaned this, picked everything up and hauled it all away. And I don't know what happened to all the hardware, but they did, it was all up in Carl's garage, which they were going to use for the restoration of that flanger, which I'm not sure what happened to that, but anyway.
Yeah, there wasn't as much hardware as we thought there might have been. There were no truss rods. I don't think there were bolsters, but there was a lot of, there was brake hangers, hanger chains, because it was body mounted brakes, hanger chains, brake, stuff like that. There actually wasn't as much underneath as we thought. The backs were broken on these because they were put up on a ledge, a big stone ledge. And so the 2 ends had dropped down. They put the 2 cars side by side and removed the 2 adjacent walls to make one big barn, a big cow barn or something like that. And in the process, they had just, destroyed the structural integrity of each car. So it wasn't long before that roof actually, collapsed just because there was nothing supporting it. It was all hollow in the middle.
Sadly.
Yeah, sadly.
Because somebody didn't come up and get them 2 years before. Anyway.
Well, someone was taking small parts off, but that wasn't taking them for restoration.
Historic salvaging is what that's called. Like the piece of wood there, again, we weren't talking about color, but this particular piece of wood there, from my considered opinion, is probably one of the best examples of honest to goodness real Sandy River and Rangeley Lakes red. The photo isn't as good as I'd like it to be, but I can assure you that that's red. And can you see that?
Yes.
That's flow quill. I got to get the glasses, sorry. Santa Fe mineral red. That is the closest out of the bottle match for those of you that care about such things right there to Sandy River and Rangeley Lakes red. There's my thing on paint colors for the night. That's not what I use because that's too slow for me. But for those of you that, care to do that sort of thing, that's a pretty close match. Yes, that what you're reading there is correct. It was 105 degrees that day.
Munson.
Or you know what? That's the other thing I'm going to do. I'm going to do a whole presentation on properly pronouncing words from the 2-footers. We're going to start with Monson. Let's do that one first. Anyway, it was 105 degrees up there that day. And this was another one of these barrel-inspired trips. Not quite like the one over there to the Big Chicken Barn. For some of you guys that have been to Maine, maybe you've been up to the Big Chicken Barn. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you don't know what the hell I'm even talking about. But anyway, I know I'm drifting, but that's okay. It's part of the story. It's all part of the show, folks. So we got word that this Big Chicken Barn way up in the, I don't know where the hell this place was, up above Camden or somewhere. Anyhow, it was hours away. So on the way there, Daryl blurts out, if I don't find anything in 10 minutes, we're leaving. Well, guess what? Anybody? Come on.
9 minutes. 9 minutes.
Took 11 minutes.
Yeah, he didn't find anything in 10 minutes. Anyhow, back to the...
Well, Gary, hold on. Because this raises the 3-bug rule.
Oh, well.
That level of impatience raises the 3-bug rule.
Yeah, wait a minute. He didn't leave the car. He wouldn't go anywhere away from a car if there were bugs. Hey, is Daryl in this?
No, he had sax practice tonight.
Oh, okay.
Well, over the years, we had this, I know it's not of 2-foot historical significance, but over the years, Daryl had the 100-foot rule. If he couldn't get to it within 100 feet, he wasn't going to get out of the car. And then over time, this got to if I can't reach out of the car and touch it, he wasn't going to get out of the car. And the thing that really pisses me off the most is I can't find the damn photo that Mark Harris took of the buggy filled with beer parked up next side the back of the car where Daryl was sound asleep with his head hanging out of the window like this. I'm sorry I couldn't find that picture because that was fun. But anyhow, so back to this. Daryl insisted we make a trip up to Monson, and most of us hadn't been up there for a while. And so we said, yeah, what the hell, let's go. I mean, it was only several hours of, godforsaken driving, even from Kingfield. It was painful. But we got there, and I don't know if you guys can see this picture. Yes, no?
Yes, we can see it fine, Gary.
Yep.
The building off the edge of this photo had a thermometer up in the eave, and it was 105 degrees.
No.
So yeah, it was that hot there that day. Absolutely just brutal. The picture you see there on the left is that fill, which, by the way, that is all slate. For those of you that have not been there, all that stuff, all these big slabs, that is all slate fill in there. So that's pretty impressive. If you ever get a chance to go up there, that is a haul. So, be advised if you do go up there. I think that was the same trip when we went to get lunch in town, and there was about 900 of us that strolled into the restaurant, and we sat there forever, and the waitress finally came over and said, we're closed.
That was actually a different trip, Gary. That was a different trip.
Whatever.
I was on that trip, and I remember that. There was like 9 of us. We walk in, and they're like, oh, we're sorry, we're closed. It's like, we probably just doubled the amount of people you served today easily, and you don't want to serve us.
Yeah, it was like 12:50 or 1:50, and they're like, oh, we close at 2. Sorry.
But it was always closed. I remember one trip up there by myself, and it was closed. I had to go see the pie lady.
Yeah, there was a gas station down the road. They were thrilled to take our money. But just if you go up there, be advised. I'll let you guys read that just for a second, just so you can digest it. So digest what you're reading there. Yes, we did actually meet and know Clara Barton's niece, which was, that's one of those cool things that we got the experience over the years of, meeting people like that. She did actually live in Clara Barton's house down on Barton Road. I mean, what the hell? Why not? Where else would you live? Particularly up there. But it took some doing to, track this down and get this source, and, to even find out that Clara Arlene Barton Gilbert even lived there, and that she actually had stuff. And the picture that you see there is one of the photos we got from her. Very nice old lady. The bed that she slept in was Clara Barton's. I'm going to assume all of you know who the hell Clara Barton was.
No, yeah. Who is she? Who is she?
Never mind. We'll save that for another presentation. But
hey, Gary, that reminds me, we also met Earl Keefe's daughter.
Correct. Who was that was that Moody? What was his name? The guy down at the barn chipping bricks that was trying to pretend like he didn't know who we were.
I don't remember that.
Anyway, so
when we were at Earl Keefe's daughter's house, Remember what she had up on the walls? She had these giant snowshoes. They had to be like 4 feet long. And those are the snowshoes that Earl used to keep in the engineer, in the cab of the locomotive, if he ever got stuck. That's how he would get out. Crazy.
No, those didn't come home with us, unfortunately. But back to this Windsor story. And I'll get to the whole Hussies thing in a second. But so when we, I don't quite sure how we tracked down Clara Barton Gilbert as a source, but we got lost on the way over there, and we wheel up, and there's these two guys pulling out of a farm lane. And in typical Mainer fashion, friend or foe? Well, you know, look, I've been doing this way too long at this point, and I certainly wasn't, you know, the newbie or novice at this. And so I yelled back, "We're not revenuers." Oh, in that case, and somehow or another that cleared all the hurdles of being given directions to Clara Barton Gilbert's house. So I know it's not funny to you guys. It was hysterical to us at the time, but it's just, you know, another one of those things of meeting somebody like this of, you know, historical importance, and, you know, in our quest for, you know, finding and getting, you know, as much information as we could. You know, back to the Windsor situation, you know, one of the things that still annoys me to this day, as we were, for those of you that know anything about the WWF and know anything about the Windsor area, you know, there's 3 road crossings there, which is the first time we tried to piece it together was a complete pain in the ass. And it just so happens there's a farm lane that comes out to just about where the first one was. And we're standing there looking like, you know, a bunch of idiots. And this guy comes over and we're, you know, chatting this guy up. And he goes, "Wait a minute." He says, "Let me go down the barn. I got something for you." So he comes rolling back with the railroad crossing sign from that crossing and hands it to guess who? Anybody? Not me.
Daryl.
No. It was at McChesney's house, but anyways, I'm still pissed off about that to this day.
He gives it to the kid.
Yeah.
It was, so he picked it up when he was a kid. He picked it up out of the, he picked it up out of the gutter when he was a kid. And he just put it in his barn.
So what, he thought he was giving it to himself 50 years later. By the way, for any of you who want to go up there, so according to this guy, there's supposedly a hand cart down in the woods down there somewhere too. If there's any takers. No? Okay. This is, I'm kind of wrapping this up here, and this is going to sort of lead into what I hope will be part 2 of 2-Foot Talk down the road. I mentioned earlier, one of the things aside from collecting all the other 2-foot crap that I collect, is early correspondence from people. And I put a couple of examples here of, this is all original stuff, by the way. These are not Xerox copies. And yes, that does mean something to me. There is some importance to me as a historian that, you know, having that original piece of paper that these guys typed up, you know, probably pounding away on their old, you know, whatever they had, Underwood typewriter. There's something significant about that. And actually, these actually the 2 documents you see there actually came up the other day in conversation with Jeff Bissonette about Richard and Saco River 4. But if you look at the letter on the right, you will see the date of 1945. And I'm going to drift a little bit off of this in a lot of this other correspondence that I have. For those of you guys that do care about historical research, historical preservation, and the like, I've got documentation there in these letters that these guys started doing this around 1919. If that doesn't blow your mind, if that isn't something that you take away from tonight as being pretty damn significant. There's no help for you in the 2-foot world, sorry. But there was at least one guy that was knowingly in 1919 researching and studying SR and RL documents. But the one there on the right happens to be from 1945. You can read it. It's from John Durr. You guys all should know who John Durr is. Trying to track down information on HK Porter, those two oddball locomotives. The document that you see on the left is, I believe that came from Linwood Moody, and it's in some original Moody correspondence that I have. And I believe that what Linwood was doing, even though he didn't like H. Temple Crittenden, he was actually going around and doodling up sketches, as you see here, and then sending them down to Crittenden, who would draw them up. And I'm sure all of you are familiar with the H.T. Crittenden drawings, which John Durr ultimately took over and sold all those as copies. So that's some pretty fascinating stuff there in the world of 2-foot history. The two little doodads there in the middle, I'm sure you W&Q freaks certainly recognize that. That is original artwork from John Durr of the W&Q bullseye numbers, which is actually pretty damn cool. So I hope somewhere down the road to get into some more of this stuff. And there is just absolutely fascinating material buried in these letters.
Pretty soon, I think.
What's going on? Shutting this off?
No, good stuff.
What's going on?
It's interesting to go through the writings and studies of various historians.
When you start, as obviously I've read through all the material that I have, and when you see what these guys were doing, again, we're all spoiled today. We're fucking clueless when it comes to this stuff. We are. These guys were doing this, typing this stuff up, and in one case, in the case of Porter Atherton, who lived in Scotland, of all places, were going back and forth. I mean, they were going back and forth to everybody, writing these letters and trying to ferret out this information that all of us today take for granted. We just flip open a flipping book somewhere and, oh yeah, we can just go there and there. Yeah. Well, that's not how it used to be. This is how it used to be. And I just picked out the old headache there because that's how they referred to the 301 caboose on the WWF, which I thought was kind of cool. That's the first place I've ever seen that. But anyways, if you scan through that Clinton Thurlow letter there, you can kind of see what he was talking about. And these guys all knew each other. I mean, this is cool stuff. So, and there is, lots more of this out there, but, trying to get it put into some sort of, format that makes it easy to do this sort of thing is going to be a challenge. But anyhow, Burnsies and the old headache and the Thurlow papers. Burnsy was happened to be Clinton Thurlow's nephew, and I can't remember exactly how we tracked him down, but Burnsy had this really neat little store right next to the state capitol. So he wasn't hard to find. He lived upstairs, so we'd go there for lunch. He shut the place up at 2. We'd hike upstairs, and then the rest of the day would be spent, talking two foot and going through his stuff. And he supplied a lot of material for the books.
Yeah. Wonderful first generation photographs that we used in our books.
Yeah.
He was a good guy. Yeah. And I think how we found him was we had heard that there was a sandwich shop in Augusta that had some old WW&amp broadsides or excursion posters on the wall. And sure enough, we go there and he's got some original excursion posters on the wall from, the Winslow era, just amazing stuff. And so we're asking around. They're like, "Oh, you need to talk to, Bernsey here." And we talked to him and he's like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "After I'm done with lunch, let's go upstairs and we'll talk trains and whatever." So we did. We went up the outside stairs, up to his apartment upstairs. We had a great time. And he had stacks of photos, just super nice, all super sharp.
I would be happy to tell you, all of you, that Chris didn't haul any of those posters away.
No.
You're all supposed to laugh at that point. It was supposed to be funny.
They were supposed to be given to him as the young guy.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, this time that didn't happen. But, well, actually, looking back on it, I wish it would have happened because I don't know what happened to him. So, I got one more slide to get through, but I'm gonna start wrapping this up. There is a whole ton of people, subjects, stories that I did not get to. There's tons of things of historical significance I didn't get to. I mean, there's only so much you can talk about in an hour and a half. And but I do appreciate everybody for tuning in and allowing me to share this stuff because like it or not, none of us are going to be here forever. And, having come to terms with all that, realize that if I, to not want to be like the people before me that did pass away and not know whether some of their stories survived or not, I didn't want to do that. I want some of this stuff to survive. I think some of this stuff is fascinating. Whether you all got anything from it or not, I'm not going to be the judge of that. That's up to you guys. But I did want to share it. And I've got a ton, there's tons of other stuff to share. So hopefully down the road, we can get more into paint colors. And if you go back to the second slide there, we can get into, why did the SR&RL, close when it did and all this other stuff. And 2-foot modeling pioneer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because there is some good stuff there. And I hopefully, other people will have, some things to share along those lines, when we get to that down the road. So.
Yeah, and Gary, I'd like to say that one of the things, it was so hard for us to track down the original grade of the WW&amp. We would go there every summer for, I don't know, about 10 years or something. We'd be there for a week to a week and a half or so. And we'd only be able to find a section of it at a time. Now, one reason was it's summertime, but number two, not everyone knew where all the grades were. And so, what you see in the books is the result of years of knocking on doors and making phone calls and meeting people and getting tours from local people and local historical societies. And that's all taken for granted when you open up one of our books and, oh, there it is. There's the grade. Here's the photos. This is north, south, east, west. This is that building. This is that building. Like, there's a lot of work going in there. And so I think what this, your presentation shows is kind of the legwork involved by any historian or the early historians to piece together, what has disappeared. Information that has disappeared, overgrown, destroyed, burnt, whatever. And it's just a lot of work, but it's amazing work.
The one of the stations up on the Winslow branch, I can't remember which one, was it North Vassalboro?
Yeah.
Vassalineboro, as you called it.
Yeah.
I don't think Bob Bennett wasn't impressed with that, Christopher. Anyhow, so the station was really hard to find. We knew it was there, but it had been moved and rotated off the grade.
Correct.
It's kind of a weird situation, but I believe it had been shingled. The original shingles had been shingled over.
Correct.
The original paint is still on that building, as far as I know, to this day.
Yeah. And if you go into the porch and look up, you can see the original undercolor of the porch ceiling, roof, whatever.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it was like rotated 90 degrees and kind of moved back from the road.
so, really good stuff. Nobody else had, done that, stumbled on that, found that for whatever reason. And, so we were, lucky enough to, met the owner. He was thrilled, got the tour of the house, the whole deal. I mean, who else is going to fling their doors open to some, a bunch of idiots banging on their door talking about, crazy stuff and say, hey, yeah, come on in and go through the house. I mean, this guy was thrilled. So, we met a lot of good people. The guy up there with the Lombards, that's a whole nother story.
Yep.
Same thing, invited us over. I mean, this guy has one. He has, the real deal. And tons of plans of these things. We got all those.
The woolen mill, all the woolen mill information came from him.
Yeah. So, lots and lots more stories out there. Anyways, the last slide I'm gonna finish up with is just kind of a lead into some of this other stuff, and this rosters and other historical matters, and some of what you're looking at here. Again, it's just a mishmash of things, so it probably doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot to any of you. But on the right is this is the early roster that these guys were working on. And a lot of the notes there are notes that I've personally filled in over the years, trying to patch this together. I know there is an early roster printed in one of DeVos's books, and Jerry isn't here, so I'm not going to say a whole lot about any of that. But as you can see, the guy on the Porter Atherton, the guy from Scotland, and Moody, Crittenden. I didn't get into the Nanook of the North thing on one of the slides, but they referred to, and I haven't pieced together who they referred to as Nanook of the North, but one of these guys, I want to say it was Jones, but I could be wrong on that, but they called him Nanook of the North. I don't know why, but they did. But anyways, this is a little bit of what these guys were doing and talking about on a pretty regular basis. And one of the last chunks of correspondence I got from Porter Atherton was about 10 pages of this, just on and on and on. And this was days. I mean, he clearly notes in the letter, this was, Tuesday at such and such time. And these guys were, really, really, really into this stuff. Thank God that they are doing this and documenting this information for us today to, to be able to, sit here like this and just, casually look at it. So anyways, that is my last slide. I truly hope you got something from this. I know it's not what Dave typically does for his Zoom presentations, but he wanted to host it, and I was more than willing to. I could have done it myself, but he wanted to do it. I'm more than happy to let him do that. Thank you, Dave, for doing that. And again, thank you all for tuning in.
Thanks, Gary.
All good stuff. Again, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. This was awesome.
Thank you,
Can't wait
Gary.
for the next one.
Fascinating. Thank you very much.
That's very
Thank you, Gary.
We'll be in touch. I'm sure Dave will, keep you guys all posted on whatever the next one is, and hopefully we'll see you all guys there.
Great.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, great, Gary. Take care.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Gary. It
All right.
was
Thank you, Gary.
absolutely fascinating, mate.
Thank you, Gary. Great time.
Yeah, thanks, Gary.